On April 1, 2026, humans left low Earth orbit for the first time in 50 years, a live demonstration of a new deep space transport system. Artemis II flew a nearly identical lunar flyby profile to Apollo 8, which makes it tempting to view this flight as a modern replica. But examining the orbital path alone misses the technical objective. The Apollo program was a sprint, designed to leave flags and footprints on the surface as quickly as possible. Artemis is engineered to establish the infrastructure for a permanent human presence. For that architecture to work, every component must be resilient. That makes Artemis II a 10-day stress test, pushing the Space Launch System, the Orion spacecraft, and the new deep space communication chain to their operational limits. Before putting humans in a lander for a descent to the lunar surface, NASA must confirm that its primary vehicles can sustain and protect a crew in the high radiation environment beyond Earth's magnetosphere. Building this capability starts with the specific launch vehicle lifting the crew off the pad. The Artemis I and II missions utilize the Space Launch System, or SLS, Block 1 configuration. The core stage relies on 4 RS-25 engines, the same hardware that powered the Space Shuttle, flanked by twin 5-segment solid rocket boosters. This exploded diagram shows the complete rocket stack. Directly beneath the Orion spacecraft is the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, or ICPS. To get this hardware through the atmosphere, the core stage and solid rocket boosters generate 8.8 million pounds of thrust during ascent. The hardware on Artemis II is already slated for a major revision. To support a permanent lunar base, the rocket must handle significantly heavier payloads. This chart details the evolution of the SLS, comparing the Block 1 crew configuration on the left to the noticeably taller Block 1B. The new exploration upper stage increases lift capability, carrying 38 metric tons of payload to deep space. That 38 metric ton figure is the threshold required to co-manifest heavy commercial habitation modules on the same rocket as the crew. It allows the SLS to serve as a heavy-duty freight system for lunar construction. Once the SLS cleared the atmosphere, the flight path for Artemis II took an unusual turn. Instead of heading straight for the moon, the crew spent their first day in a highly elliptical Earth orbit. This delay is a specific risk mitigation strategy. A 24-hour orbit allows mission control to validate Orion's life support and manual piloting systems, while the spacecraft is still close enough to Earth for an emergency return. During proximity operations, the crew manually flew Orion around the spent ICPS to test handling. Following the translunar injection burn, they flew a free return trajectory, looping around the moon's far side to slingshot naturally back toward Earth. This flight path acts as a failsafe. Even if Orion suffered a failure of its primary propulsion system, physics alone would ensure the crew returned to Earth without additional engine burns. While Artemis II demonstrated the transport vehicle, the strategy for lunar exploration has shifted, specifically with the decision to cancel the Lunar Gateway. The original plan relied on the Gateway space station in lunar orbit to act as a staging node. NASA recently modified this architecture for direct mission profiles. Removing the Gateway simplifies requirements and reduces the timeline for the first landings. To replace the Gateway's logistics hub function, the agency is integrating commercially supported transportation. NASA has contracted the SpaceX Starship and the Blue Origin Blue Moon Mk2 to deliver cargo and astronauts directly to the lunar South Pole. Relying on direct commercial logistics instead of orbital station construction accelerates the deployment of a permanent surface base. While the engineering teams validated the hardware, the spacecraft also functioned as a laboratory for deep space biology as it passed outside the Earth's protective magnetosphere. The flagship biological test of Artemis II is the AVATAR experiment, which stands for a Virtual Astronaut Tissue Analog Response. The payload consists of organ-on-a-chip devices. These are thumb drive-sized units lined with living human cells that use microfluidic channels to mimic organ-level functions. For this flight, the chips contained living bone marrow cells harvested direct from the Artemis II crew members before launch. Bone marrow is highly sensitive to radiation, making it an ideal sample to study the effects of microgravity and cosmic radiation on human biology. Following the mission, researchers are performing single-cell RNA sequencing to map changes in gene expression. By comparing the irradiated chips against identical control chips kept on Earth, they can identify the cellular impact of deep space travel. This data allows NASA to develop personalized medical countermeasures for future long-duration missions, shifting from generic care to astronaut-specific space medicine. On April 10, 2026, the Orion spacecraft splashed down in the Pacific Ocean, concluding the first crewed test of the program. Following splashdown, recovery teams secured the capsule and the crew aboard the USS John P. Murtha. The flight test provided critical operational data on Orion's life support, the crew's manual piloting performance, and the deep space communication networks. The mission also provided a new visual perspective, capturing this photograph of an Earthset as the planet rose over the lunar horizon. With the transportation profile validated by the 10-day flight, the immediate next step is Artemis II. NASA will combine this flight-proven transit system with commercial landers for a return to the lunar surface. Artemis II confirmed that the transit architecture is sound. By establishing a reliable delivery system to the Moon, NASA is creating the foundation for the eventual human exploration of Mars.